Peace, everyone. Welcome to Karmic Dynasty. I am here today with Michael Coles. He is back on the platform. He is here again, and I appreciate him being here. Now, today, right quick, we are looking at Dawn of Legends and the Kemetic origins of classic tales. Now, right quick, I must say, Michael Coles was here before, and he shared with us. I know y'all hear me, but y'all can't see me. Peace, everyone. Peace, peace. All right, all right, all right. I had to go grab it. He shared with us all. Okay. Now, if you missed it, the link is in the description. Check it out. So we kind of course he may talk about it today. I'm still getting people talking about they ordered the set today, and I've been sharing our feedback with Michael, and he did two giveaways on that same broadcast. We are going to have a part two. We told you we have it. He's here, but that's not what he's here for today. What he's here for today is while we were prepping for this broadcast, we had a side discussion take off. Many of them. Today, he's here to share the results of one of our side discussions. We are always productive in our manners. And Michael, if you would continue, but first introduce yourself again to the platform, the audience, share with everyone how we can contact you for more information or just for questions or to donate some monetary issues to you. However you like to see fit to open the show, introduce yourself in whichever manners. I'm pleased. Gratitude. And again, welcome to Karmic Dynasty again.
Yeah, well, thanks, Joy. I appreciate it. So I'm Michael Coles. You may remember me from the last broadcast, creator of the Kemetic Tarot, which Joy was just showing. Um, before we get started, something I promised everyone last time that we would basically do the spell to recharge the Tayet amulet.
Yeah, the
You may
spell. Let's
recall
do that.
this is the Tayet amulet. So I'm gonna, yep, that's the guy. So this is a symbol of protection. It's called the knot of Aset or the girdle of Aset. It's closely associated with Aset. Yep, there it is. And today I'm going to go through the spell that recharges it from the Book of the Dead, recharges it with protective powers. So according to the Book of the Dead or the Book of Going Forth by Day, you need a wooden bowl made out of sycamore, your Tayet amulet placed in the bowl. Then you need to recite the spell from the Book of the Dead or the Book of Coming Forth by Day. And the spell is, you have to excuse me, I'm going to have to actually read it off of here. So I'm going to have to look down while I'm doing this. It's listed several places in the set. So if you get the Veil of a set, tarot card set, it's listed prominently in there. All right. Now, this is rose water, which you can make. There's instructions online to make it. You can buy it, pre-made, which I did because I'm not very handy with that kind of stuff. But this is what rose water looks like, sort of a pinkish, reddish. Basically, it's the water you get from boiling or steeping roses. You pour this on the amulet. And as you do it, you recite the spell. You have your blood, O Aset. You have your power, O Aset. You have your magic, O Aset. This amulet is a protection for the Great One, which will drive away whomever will commit a crime against him or her. That's it. You just basically you wash off the amulet with the rose water and recite those words of power, those Weret Hekau, And by the time you get done, it's supposed to be completely recharged with its protective powers. Also smells real nice. Now, that amulet is made out of red jasper, which is a semi-precious stone. It's a volcanic stone. They dig it up from underground near volcanically active sites. And that basically that red jasper stone is specified by the Book of the Dead or the Book of Going Forth by Day that that's what it's supposed to be carved out of. All right, I just want to get that out of the way. I know I promised you that last time, so I just want to make sure we covered that.
Yes, and I forgot. But yes, you're right. It smells wonderful. But go ahead, continue as you want.
That's so well. Tonight we'll be giving away. Before we finish, we'll give away another set, another Kemetic tarot set. We're going to restrict it to U.S. residents because the shipping and everything is kind of crazy with the shipping laws and the taxes and the VAT taxes and all this kind of crazy stuff going overseas. So it's basically we'll ship it anywhere in the U.S.
And that's a surprise to even me. I didn't know there was a giveaway today, everyone. So yeah, the giveaway. Would you like to tell everyone what they have to do, how it works to get the free?
We'll do it the same way we did it last time. We'll ask a question at the near the end, and there's a lot of material we're going to cover. There will be a test. Good news, it'll only be a one-question test.
And you have to answer right.
Yep.
You need to be able to also provide your shipping address to myself or Michael to receive the item. And and it's during the live broadcast. So if you're watching the replay and you get the answer right, no, we're not talking to you. No, catch us next time.
To the next time.
To the next. Oh, and you're going to share your answer in the comment section. That was a question Michael had last time. Like, how will we know? We have receipts. They are going to drop the answer in the comment section. So again, Michael, gratitude.
All right. All right. So in this one, be sure to visit the website, kemetictarot.net. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Lots of information about the cards, definitions for all the cards, and the meanings of all the cards in the Kemetic Tarot deck. There's stories in there. In fact, there's some additional stories that we put up there that aren't even in the books in the set. So you'll get some extra content you won't find anywhere else. And lots of information about the symbols and the magic of ancient Kemet. Well, you can find all over that site. And we'll be adding more stuff as we go. And it's available in French and English. We have a lot of French-speaking people who are interested. So we went ahead and translated it. All right. So I guess with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
All right. Let's get started. Slide 1. Let's go.
All right. So I guess everyone here has probably heard of the Cinderella story. So we're going to talk about first is the origins of the Cinderella story. Now, the Cinderella story, the earliest known example of a Cinderella story is called Rhodopus, and it's from ancient Kemet. It's an ancient Kemetic story. The tale of Rhodopus has been traced back all the way to Kemet as about 600 BC. So we're talking, 2,400 years ago? Now, the Kemetic tale of Rhodopus was transcribed around 7 BC. So about 600 years after, from the point where it's been at least traced back to in Kemet, it was actually transcribed. Now, it was transcribed, it was transcribed by a Greek, right? By a Greek guy. Now, what's interesting about this, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, and there's a very specific reason I use the word transcribed, right? This Greek person did not write it. He did not invent the story. He did not write the story. And in fact, when he transcribes it, when he writes down the story, he gives credit to the actual authors, the actual creators of the story in Kemet. Now, if you want to fast forward a little bit to about the year 1634. That's where we find one of the first European stories of Cinderella. One of the first original European stories. It was an Italian version. And then that was taken by the Germans. And then, it went through some whole mess. But the original version, the first version we've ever found, is Rhodopis from Kemet around 600 BC. So keep that in mind. All right. And the next slide, please. All right. Now, I call this Rhodopis versus Cinderella. In this section, basically, I'm going to tell you why you need to take a healthy dose of skepticism if you use Wikipedia or some other platform for your research, right? Now, if you look at this Wikipedia article over here, I highlighted the word European. That's the section where they listed the ancient version of Rhodopis under European, right? And the Greek guy's name is Strabo. And in his book, he said, they quoted him, "When she was bathing, an eagle snatched one of her sandals from her maid and carried it to Memphis." That sentence is important. So they claim on Wikipedia that Rhodopis is a European version of Cinderella. That is incorrect. They've actually changed the narrative, and they've done it in a very slick way. Go to the next slide, please. And I'll show you how. In the original Strabo, in his original telling, he says, "They tell the fabulous story that," right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. I put 5 words on there. 6 words there at the beginning. So he actually gives credit to they, whoever they is. Well, this particular book that he's writing, he's talking about ancient, what the Greeks called Egypt, right? Ancient Kemet. He basically is giving credit to the people of that land. He's saying they, as in the people of, Egypt or Kemet. He's literally telling us, I didn't write this story. I'm just telling you the story that's told in this country, in Kemet. Now, whoever put this on Wikipedia decided, hey, let's leave these 6 words out and we can call it European. This is why you have to be very careful when you're doing research, because you will run into things like this where people, leave things out, add things to it, whatever, just to kind of fit their own narrative, for whatever reason. All right. And the next one, please. All right. Do we have any questions about Cinderella before we go on? Any questions from anyone?
No, not yet. But what I want to say before we get in any further, so Michael started out the broadcast with what he promised. Back in the day, I promised everyone I would come with a part 2 of nursery rhymes. So let's count this as credit for my part 2. I do have a part 3 and 4 planned. I'll get to that as well. But I appreciate Michael for assisting and bringing the part 2 today. So no questions.
I can't promise the story. I can't promise the story is a rhyme, but
Hey, you know what I mean? Okay.
All right. So now we talk about Aesop. I assume everyone here has heard of Aesop, Aesop's Fables.
Actually, there's a few people who have not, because I was telling people about today, and they was like, "What fables? A who? Sop who? Sop a biscuit? A little sopping.
Maybe an example.
Okay, let's do the example.
Everyone's probably heard of the Mouse and the Lion, or the Tortoise and the Hare.
Yep, the tortoise and the hare.
Tortoise and the Hare. Those are Aesop's Fables, right? They're credited to Aesop. Slow and steady wins the race, and for the turtle and the hare, and for the lion and the mouse, the lion gets a sliver in his paw. He gets a sliver of wood in his paw, and the mouse helps him pull it out, and saves him or whatever, gets him out of a net. So Aesop basically is credited with dozens of these stories, right? I mean, literally dozens of these stories with walking, talking animals that act like people, right? All these stories that Aesop told are from Kemet. They're all Kemetic tales. They're all from the ancient Kemetic oral traditions. And I'm going to explain to you how we know that. So Aesop is famous for his fables with animals that talk and act like people. We call those anthropomorphic. Big word. All it means is that animals that talk and walk and, have feelings like people. Aesop was supposed to be, oh, there you go. Yep. Bird in the hand, better than two in the bush. Worse the wise. That's it. So Aesop was supposedly a Greek in Kemet around 600 BC. But it's disputed whether he even existed at all, right? They don't even know that this guy was real. And there is a lot of evidence that because of our history with these types of deals, that people will assign a name to something, and then that name, like they'll write a story down, they'll assign a name to it. And once they put the name on it, when they come out with a new story, someone else just slaps that new story on it and says, oh, gives that first guy credit, right? Whether it's a real person or imaginary, right? It'd be like taking someone famous today, like, I'm trying to think of a famous author. I don't know, off the top of my head, Stephen King or something.
I was about to say Stephen King. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the first person you think of when you think of authors now. But yeah, someone just says, okay, Stephen King wrote all these books. He's a really famous guy. So, 100 years from now, someone comes along, writes another story, and they put Stephen King's name on it. Say, oh, here's a lost book that Stephen King did. Well, that's just to get the popularity off the name. So a lot of that was going on back in the day. So there's a good chance that happened, that someone just made up a name, and then they just started adding stories to it over time and giving it name, adding the name to it, just so they could say, yeah, Aesop wrote this too. Yeah, Aesop wrote this also. Yeah, that kind of good stuff. All right. And now Aesop did not invent these fables. He didn't invent these stories, right? It's basically as well known at this point that he transcribed the Kemetic oral traditions of the people around him, if he existed, right? Even if he didn't exist, the stories are Kemetic stories that migrated their way from Kemet, up to Europe at some point. But they all started in Kemet. And there's certain reasons why we know this if we look at the literature. Go to the next one. The next slide. All right. So anthropomorphic animals that talk and act like people, was a common device used in Kemetic folktales. In Kemetic stories, they were just widely used. We have a bunch of other stories that show us this, right? There's the story of the two hyenas, the two vultures, the cat and the vulture, the lion who hunted man, and a bunch of other stories like that. And a lot of those stories are included in some of those stories are available on the website right now, and I'll be adding more as we go. But this is a very common device used by the Kemetic people in their storytelling. They would basically take animals and give them human speech, human attributes, human walking, talking, all that kind of good stuff. The Greeks didn't really do that, right? The Greeks actually did a thing where they said, pretty much, if it acts like a human, if it talks like a human, if it behaves like a human, it has to be human, or at least partially human. So you ended up with like half human monsters, right? That sort of behave like humans, but also behave like animals. But you didn't have any like, okay, here's a mouse and here's a lion, and they are literally just a mouse and a lion, but they act like humans. That just didn't happen that much, and that didn't happen really in Greek stories until, and I think I have that on the slide here also. Yeah, go to the next one, please. Okay, yeah, so I actually don't have that one on there. But yeah, basically it was picked up at some point by the Greeks. But even then, the style and the content was traced back to ancient Kemet and Sumeria. Sort of a combination of their two traditions brought together into one. All right. Now, if we look at the fable of the lion and the mouse, That fable was written down by Aesop or credited to Aesop around 600 BC. The lion who hunted man is a very similar story from about 1500 BC, about 900 years earlier. And that story wasn't even written down by the Greeks. It was actually written down by the Kemetic people. The story is very, very similar. Both the stories, the main characters are a lion and a mouse. And in both stories, the moral of the story is the same. The mouse helps the lion in his time of need. He helps him escape. He helps him, get on and go on with his stuff. That's basically it. Now, the path to get there is a little bit different. Some of the details are different, but it's the same story, essentially. All right. Now, The Lion and the Mouse uses a standard Kemetic folktale theme, right? There's a lot of themes that you see when you start reading the ancient Kemetic tales. This particular theme is the strong helping the weak, right? There's other themes that are very common as well, like the wandering goddess is very, it just permeates. It's all through everything, right? The wandering goddess myth. And in the wandering goddess myth, Tahuti actually tells Sekhmet a story about how he can help her, even though he says, "You're much stronger than me, but I'll be able to help you when you need it." To kind of calm her down because she was actually about to kill him. So there are a lot of these themes that kind of go through everything. The life, birth, life, death, and resurrection. Common themes all throughout Kemetic folklore. All right, next one, please. All right. I assume everyone here has seen The Lion King, right?
Yes, yes. Sing The Lion King.
Yes, C sharp J. I mean the weak helping the strong. You're correct. That's exactly what I mean. That theme is really the theme that really permeates is the weak helping the strong in their time of need. That's one of the Kemetic folktale themes that really just is all through the old stories.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me open this thing up real quick.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I assume everyone here has seen The Lion King, I'm just going to assume everyone here has seen The Lion King. I'm also going to assume that some people, I said most of us on here, but I'm assume some people have read Shakespeare's Hamlet in high school. And even if you haven't, you probably have heard of it. You know what the story is about, at least.
Yeah, I've not read it, but I at least heard of it.
Yeah, it's a pretty dry read, but for me it was.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about what these two stories have in common, right? And what they have in common is that they're both basically taken directly from the Asur myth.
Wow.
Also called the Osiris myth, which is an
Okay.
ancient Kemetic tale of the god.
Right.
In fact, it's the most famous ancient Kemetic tale. It's the story of the murder of Asur by his evil brother Set. Right?
Mm-hmm.
How Set takes over the kingdom. How
Mm.
the prince, Asur's son, Heru, has to come back and fight his uncle to reclaim the throne.
Wow.
So we'll cover the similarities here real quick. So in all three of these stories, the king gets murdered by his brother, right? He gets murdered by his evil brother. The good king murdered by his evil brother. In The Lion King, Mustafa is killed by Scar.
Scar.
I'm shocked I remember those names.
Right.
In Hamlet, the king is murdered by his brother, by his evil brother, who wants to just take over the throne. And in I'm getting old. I got to run through this in my head now. And in what am I doing here? Okay. Yeah, and then and in the Asor myth, I cover Asor already. Hold on. All right, so Asor is killed by Set. The Lion King, uh, the king is killed by his brother Scar, and in Hamlet, the king is killed by his brother. Now, when the king gets murdered in all three stories, it completely throws nature out of balance. The king represents the nature, sort of an aspect of nature. He represents the land, right? And when the king dies, it completely throws nature out of balance, right? The kingdom turns bad. The crops fail. The people are starving. Bad things start happening. Uh, in each of these stories, the ghost of the king shows up and appears to the prince, his son, and tells him to return and avenge his murder. Right. So in each of these stories, in the Lion King, Mustafa appears in the clouds and tells his son, "Hey, you have to go back." Right. Um, in Hamlet, the king's ghost shows up to Hamlet and says, "Hey, you got to go take care of this guy for me." Right. You have to avenge my murder, avenge my death. And in the Asor myth, Asor actually appears to Heru, his son, in a dream, the crown prince. He appears to him in a dream and says, "Hey, I'm going to teach you how to fight, and you have to go back and basically avenge my death and get the throne." All right.
Well, right quick, if I may.
Yes.
No interruption in the flow intended. Now this is where I'm gonna share this, because when you first was sharing the origin of the Lion King story, I thought you were going to say, make reference to some like dumb stuff I heard. I'm gonna say it's dumb stuff now because I know more, I know better now. But yeah, but a few years ago I heard this story. They were given this, there was this whole Asian controversy. So in a Japanese anime from the 60s is basically not only the intellectual property, but they were also just straight trying to say that Disney stole Lion King from this Asian culture. So another attempt from them to distract from the truth, because myself, without looking forward, I would have just thought that, hey, it came from the Asian culture. So shame on me. I mean, I never even thought about Lion King that much to care. But yeah, this is the stuff. If my mind went no further, I think that this is what the issue was, the big debate.
Yeah. No.
So
Well,
for me,
the funny thing
this
is, Kimba the White Lion was copied from the Asor myth also.
right.
It's
And
a
thank,
universal. It's like a universal plot now, but the
yeah,
Kemetic people came up with it first.
I'm like, wow. And I could easily see the Asar and Set, and who is it? Who's left?
Hamlet,
Who's
Asur and Aset, and the Lion King, Mustafa.
what's the son? Heru?
Heru, yeah, his son.
Yeah. You
Asur.
know, I could clearly see that, because only because I know the story, but I never even, when I'm thinking and I'm on a comedic wavelength, Lion King and Disney is nowhere near my thoughts. You know what I mean? But definitely I see it. I see it. I see it. But I'm back with you now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's funny because they had like interviews with the producers of the Lion King, and they
Yeah.
admitted, hey, we took the idea from Hamlet, right? Well, guess what?
Mm,
Hamlet got the idea.
okay.
So, all right. So where were we? So the ghost appears, and in each story, the prince returns home and he battles his uncle for the throne. Right? He fights his
Hmm.
uncle for the throne, and in all three stories, the prince defeats his uncle in the end, and he reclaims the throne. All
Right.
right. Now, in the instance of Hamlet, he only reclaims the throne for a few minutes because then he commits suicide. That's some crazy twist they add to it, but that's, it doesn't matter. It's the same story, right?
Mm-hmm.
He added his little twist to it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just I'd like to point out, there's also the wise advisor / messenger in all three stories. He's a recurring theme. He's a recurring theme all through Kemetic tales, right? The wise advisor, the knowledgeable guy, the wise person who has all the answers all the time. And in Kemetic stories, 99.9% of the time is going to be Tahuti, right? Almost every time it's Tahuti.
Right.
No one else is that smart. So in the Asur myth, Tahuti is the wise person. He's the messenger of the gods and of the Neteru. He's the one who travels back and forth, carries messages. He has to write down the letters. He has to carry them. He has to bring back the responses. He has to give the wise counsel. And basically tell the other deities, hey, this is what we have to do. We have to do this. We don't want to do that. And one of his sacred animals is a baboon. So keep that in mind. Now, in Hamlet, there's a guy named Polonius, Polonius, who is like the wise guy. He's the guy who says, I don't know, he throws out some wise words in Hamlet. To be or no, not to be or not. To thine own self be true, blah, 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 blah. He throws out the wisdom, drops a little knowledge every now and then. In The Lion King, you have Rafiki, who is the mandrill, right? And a mandrill is very similar to a baboon. In fact, they used to be classified as baboons. So basically, Tahuti's sacred animal, his avatar is being represented in The Lion King as the wise man. And he's the one who delivers the wisdom and actually carries the messages back and forth to the Lion King or to Simba and then back to the village. All right. Now, in the Asur myth is actually an oral tradition that goes back thousands of years, right? The earliest one they found so far goes back to 1150 BC, so over 3,200 years ago, about 3,200 years ago. That's the earliest written form that we've found, but we know the oral tradition goes back a lot farther than that, maybe 5,000 to 6,000 years. The Lion King is from 1994, and Hamlet was made in about 1600. So much, much later.
Now, I hear echo. The endings of these stories. So the Hamlet story has one ending. It sounds like I haven't read it, so I'm taking what I'm observing today from you, Michael. The Lion King had one ending. I saw the movie. I saw it have one ending. In that part one, the original movie. Now, in the Asar myth, the ending with Set and Heru, there were different versions, different endings.
Yeah.
Now, I have a synopsis of the endings from the book that's in the set that you have in here. The book in here has a synopsis of the different versions, the different endings. Would you like to talk to us about the different endings that are out there? And I know the one, like there are some endings where Heru did not win. Is that right? A version?
Not really. No, not really. But there's different endings that show how he won in different ways, right?
Okay, that's what it is.
And what happened to Set?
You know what my issue was? Who was that was making the decision? Ra.
Amun-Ra.
Amun-Ra was making the decision. And in the one version I read, I was surprised that the decision was not in his hands.
Yes.
That's what I'm remembering. Yeah, I was like, what? How did he hand over the decision making to this group? I'm like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, and that's an interesting, that's sort of an interesting side story to itself, right? So what happened was you had, even though they had all across Kemet, they had essentially the same deities, the same Neteru, right? Everyone knew all the Neteru. It was the same group of the same Ennead, the same group of deities that represented everything. But what happened was when you go into each region of the country, right? Each region had their own little twist on it, right? For instance, uh, in Memphis, there was a big cult of Ptah. Ptah was considered the creator, the great creator, like Amun Ra was in other places, right? So when what happened was eventually Memphis was taken over by the main Amun Ra cult, and it just kind of spread. Well, rather than just throw Ptah off to the side and say, no, he didn't really do anything, they basically merged him into Amun Ra and said, oh, yeah, he's just another aspect of Amun Ra. He's the same guy, just different name, And that way you kind of bring the local people along and say, yeah, you're still, sacrificing to the right guy. You just didn't know his name, right? So they don't feel stupid all of a sudden, like, oh wait, well, what do you mean my deity is fake? What do you mean? No. He's the same guy. He just had the name wrong. That's all. Well, in their version, Ptah actually in their version, Ptah actually, when he goes to make the decision, he hands the decision off and gives it to Geb, right? Who's the hereditary chief of the gods, the hereditary chief of the Neteru. He basically hands it off to him and says, okay, you make this decision. I don't even want to deal with it anymore. So Geb basically says, okay, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to split the kingdom in half, and we're going to give half to Heru and half to Set. Well, the other Neteru get really upset about that, right? You can't reward someone for murdering his brother. That doesn't make sense. So they kind of went after Geb, and then after a while, Geb comes back and says, you know what? Yeah, that's not a good idea. I'm changing my mind. I'm going to award the entire kingdom to Heru, and Set can go live in the desert, right? Now, in the other version, I guess the Hermiopolis version, they basically, which had the major cult center of Amun Ra, they basically had Amun Ra making all the decisions. And at the end, he basically says, at the very end, he says, bring Set before me in chains. And they bring him up, and he basically says, okay, you know what? We're done here, right? Heru gets the crown, you're out. He's beat you every time, you lose. There's nothing more to be done here. And then he basically turns him into essentially the god of thunder, the Neteru of thunder or lightning, and puts him in the sky, right? So there's different, depending on where the story was told, there's slightly different endings. But the main theme is always the same. The prince comes back, he fights his evil brother, and he wins, and he gets the throne back. So does that make sense?
Makes all the sense.
Okay. All right. So going back to this, so what are the differences between these stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Asur myth is an oral tradition going back thousands of years, right? Lion King is from 1994, and Hamlet, which was like 30 years ago almost. Hamlet's from 1600, which is 400 years ago. Yeah, we're talking about the original story that goes back literally thousands of years. And the endings in the Asur myth and the Lion King, the prince wins back the throne, and he restores order to the kingdom, restores prosperity, just restores balance to the kingdom, because now everything's working like it should. The king's son is now on the throne, so everything's back to normal. Everyone gets enough to eat. Everyone's happy, In Hamlet, and I don't know what it is about Shakespeare, but he always kills off all his characters at the end, which is really depressing. But in Hamlet, the prince beats his uncle, but then he gets killed in the final battle. All right. So he basically kills his uncle. He gets the throne back, and then 5 minutes later, he's dead. So he gets the throne back for like 5 minutes. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but whatever. Very dark.
Yes. Wow. Wow.
All right.
The biggest difference.
The biggest difference, the single biggest difference between the Assortment, Hamlet, and the Lion King is that in the Assortment, the queen, Aset, plays a major role. In fact, the story is almost completely about her, right? It's like I would say 70% of the Assortment is about Aset. It's about the queen and her powers, what she's doing to help her son win, how she's, everyone else, even Heru is like, I mean, he's not on the same level as her in these stories, right? A lot of times he's just running around doing what she tells him to do, right? He's not really, all the way there all the time, right? But she is the major player in the entire story, right? Now, in Hamlet, the queen, her name's Gertrude, she doesn't know anything. She's useless. She is very ignorant. She doesn't know anything. And then I don't know, she gets poisoned or something. She just dies. No big loss. She doesn't do anything. In The Lion King, the queen, Sarabi, she doesn't play an important role until the very end, right? And at the very end, she gets all the female lionesses together and they fight off the hyenas, right? The bad guys. But other than that, she doesn't do anything through the entire movie, right? That's the biggest difference. In the modern versions of this plot, where they basically taken the plot and moved it into the modern version, they basically got rid of the central role of the goddess and made it almost irrelevant. It's like it's not needed anymore in these new stories, which is a shame. It does, the original version, the goddess is the main player of the entire story, and she deserves a bigger role. All right, so now that we covered that, do we have any questions on any of that? The Lion King, the Hamlet, any of that good stuff so far?
Okay. I heard you was muted. Somebody said you was muted.
I'm muted.
Oh no, I've heard you the entire time.
Okay.
Maybe it's just hers. So C Sharp J says, so the Europeans downplayed the feminine energy in Lion King and Hamlet, just like Christianity. Wow. Kemet gives all praises due to the goddess.
Correct.
Yeah, and that comment's been sitting there for a minute. Yeah, they just got there. Yep, basically. Yep. Sounds good here. Yep. So Gemini 9, you may want to check your sound. Everything is good. Yep. It was just for a second. Your audio's good. Yeah, so you're good. We'll continue.
Okay. All right. So I put together a little thing of Kemetic wisdom here. Now, one of the things I know everyone's heard Proverbs: a penny saved is a penny earned, and a bird in the hand, all that kind of good stuff. So I put together some Kemetic proverbs here that actually come from of the country, right? Each one they found so far goes back to 1150 BC. So I'm hearing myself back.
Oh, my bad. I thought I was muted. I was checking back. My bad. I'm back. Y'all know what? I apologize. I was running back so I could see where the disturbance was probably at. So if there's something I could check so it wouldn't happen again. Apologies. I was like, why did he stop talking? But go ahead.
Okay. No, I just heard myself speaking and I was like, I'm not moving my lips. That's weird.
All right, so my bad. If you would start.
Right. Yeah. So you've all heard Proverbs. Lightning never strikes twice in the same place. Penny saved is a penny earned. Just words to the wise, right? A lot of those actually come from ancient Kemet, and I actually have some examples here. The modern version, and then the ancient Kemetic version. So if you've ever heard the saying, "What goes around comes around," well, the Kemetic version is a little longer. It says, "He who makes himself a robber will be robbed himself, for a robber robs robbers."
Mm-hmm.
We when you hear violence begets violence, or the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Mm-hmm.
Kemetic version is those who kill are themselves killed. Violence is repaid with violence.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've heard there's no place like home.
Chill.
In ancient Kemet, say whatever is on earth, nothing is more beloved than your birthplace.
Wow.
Now these were written, from the sacred scrolls of Tahuti, which I believe they republished as the Book of Tahuti, and there's several other scrolls where these little proverbs are found, and they're in museums in London, Germany, just kind of everywhere they can basically shove them. But these little snippets of wisdom can be found kind of all over the place, and these things date back thousands of years. I mean, 3, 4, 5,000 years, written down form.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the next page.
Were some of the Proverbs were some of these Proverbs from the 42 laws of Ma'at or Mayat, whatever your tongue say. And right quick on tongue correction check. C Sharp J said Europeans. I am looking and the type is kind of small. I thought it was an A. My bad. The Europeans. I got you. Get the peons. And Kai Creatress is, I already know why she laughing, because she writes poems about the Europeans. So yeah, she's relating to you right now. Definitely. All right. Oh yes. So is it possible that the answer to this question is in your presentation?
No, I don't really go into the 42 laws of Ma'at in here that
Okay.
much. I mean, that's a whole separate. I mean, there's 42 of them. That's a whole separate.
Separate podcast.
yeah. But the 42 laws of Ma'at, basically, just in case, I'm pretty sure everyone here probably already knows, but they're basically the laws that you're supposed to live by to satisfy Ma'at, which is truth, justice, harmony, and when you get to the final judgment in the Hall of Two Truths, or the Hall of Two Ma'ats, when you get to that final judgment, you have to recite the 42 laws of Ma'at back to a panel of 42 Neteru, right? 42 judges who will basically judge you right there and decide if you get to go on to the next step. The next step is where they actually weigh your heart on the scales of Ma'at against the feather of Ma'at, right? So you actually have to recite the 42 negative confessions of the 42 laws of Ma'at, and the negative confessions, they cover a lot of ground, right? Things like not have I had an affair with my neighbor's wife, not have I killed anyone, not have I stolen a sacred animal, et cetera, et cetera. There's 42 of them. But yeah, actually, it's kind of funny because if you look at the 10 Commandments, it's almost like a scaled down version of the 42 negative confessions of the 42 laws of Ma'at, right? It's really sort of a condensed version of the same thing, right? Basically, you can kind of group them together and say, okay, I haven't disrespected the Neteru, and on the 10 Commandments, it's I haven't disrespected God. I haven't killed anyone, haven't, et cetera, right? There you go. So you can kind of group them together and see how they kind of line up with the 10 Commandments, Sort of, the ideas in the 42 laws are universal. All right. So, here I said, but wait, there's more. Have you ever heard the saying, the morning daylight appears plainer when you put out your candle? That was said by Ben Franklin. You may not be familiar with that.
I've not heard of that.
Yeah, it's it's a little longer than most of his stuff. Like penny saved, penny earned, right? But said by Ben Franklin, and Tahuti originally said in the Book of Tahuti, a lamp does not shine in the sun. When you say tried and true, the Kemetic version was that which was tried, that is. And even in the Bible, right, going back to the 10 Commandments reference, you see things like This guy says, brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. That's James 5:10. The Kemetic version is suffering of heart and tongue is that which causes a prophet to come into being. So suffering basically makes you a prophet. That's what creates prophets, which is basically the same thing they're saying in the Bible there. And down at the bottom, I said I could do this all day because I literally have hundreds of these things. There's so much, I mean, just like so much parallel and a lot of really just kind of you can see how it kind of got transformed as it was taken from Kemet, into Europe and then, back over to America in a lot of cases or put into the Bible, the Greeks and the Romans and, whoever was writing the Bible at the time. You just see how it kind of permeated how it just kind of got into everything, right? All right. So to finish up, I wanted to spend some time talking about the ancient Kemetic storytelling, right? Well, actually, this isn't going to finish up. We'll finish up on the next section. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Kemetic storytelling before we get to the next section. So in ancient Kemet, they had an oral tradition of storytelling, right? For much of its history, for thousands and thousands of years, everything was passed down orally, right? They literally had to memorize these long stories. I mean, just really, really long stories that just memorize them, and then go out and pretty much tell the people. And the people who did this were, the priests, the scribes, people who were really familiar with these stories would go out and they would recite them at public events. Now, the ancient Kemetic storytellers were kind of like modern day actors, right? They were playing to their audience. So they were kind of acting everything out with a script in front of everyone, right? When those oral stories were first written down, and because of that, when those oral stories were first written down in written form, they were extremely long and they had a lot of details in them that don't really add a whole lot when you read it. When you read it, when you kind of read it in a written down format, you just see a lot of extra stuff in there, right? Just a whole lot of extra, just dialogue that doesn't need to be in there, just a lot of stuff like that. Now, the reason for this is those oral stories, when they were written down, they, like I said, they were acting, right? They were like actors. They were acting out their parts. So a lot of the old tales are written down sort of almost in, you could almost say movie script format, right? It's almost written like movie scripts. You see a lot of dialogue back and forth. You see some action and you see some more dialogue. And sometimes you see special appearances with a lot of subplots, a lot of side conversations, a lot of hidden items, special characters, stuff like that, from characters that don't really add anything to your story. They just kind of throw them in randomly, right? Like, oh, by the way, we're going to throw this guy in here, right? There's a really good one, which is the tale of, and I don't even have it here, in the Assortment, right? They tell this, they're telling this story, and Amun-Ra is going back and forth about who should be king. Should it be Set? Should it be Heru? Should it be Set? Should it be Heru? He's really going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. He just can't decide. Well, after a long time, after a bunch of this back and forth business, right? And these two, Heru and Set, really beating each other up and tearing up the whole country and, just really destroying things and really just kind of wrecking everything. They're having a great council of the Neteru and they're advising Amun-Ra. In the middle of that, one of the Neteru Baba, right, jumps up, points his finger at Amun-Ra and says, your temple has no worshipers. I mean, and it basically, he insulted him in the middle of a great council of the Neteru. This random character just jumps up and he doesn't do, and Baba doesn't do anything else in the entire story. He's just there for that one line. That's it, right? So why did they do that? Why would they just throw a random guy in there just for no reason, just to throw out one line? Well, apart from the comedy value, right? You have this guy jumping up telling the Lord of the Neteru, "Hey, you know what? You have no worshipers in your temple, right?" There's a little comedy value in there, and also this character may have been popular in some region of the country. Baba the Neteru, he may have been popular in some region of the country where they were telling this story, so they would tailor the story just for that region when they went to tell it there. Hey, let's throw this random character in here. The people know who he is, and they'll get a kick out of hearing it. It's like an entertainer, right? Like a rock star, rap star. You get up on stage and you say, "Hello, Cleveland," right? Like that's not something that's part of your act or part of your songs or whatever. But when you go to Cleveland, it makes the audience feel good that you know their name, you know where you are, you recognize them, right? So it's kind of on that level. Also, a lot of these little details they add in, a lot of the little extra dialogue or whatever, when you're reading it out loud, when you're acting it out, it gives you a little more drama, right? A little more sense of drama, right? Think of like when you watch a TV show and you see people like I don't know, they'll throw in an extra sentence, maybe an extra pause, and then and then say something, maybe kind of funny or maybe kind of interesting or whatever, something scary. It kind of adds a little bit to the tension, right? Or whatever feeling you're trying to get, the tension, the funniness, the joy, whatever. It just adds a little bit more. When you're reading it, though, it's like it doesn't really add that much, right? It's like reading a movie script, and it really is when you go back and read some of these original versions. All right. So on the next one, so we talked about the oral tradition and really why the oral tradition sometimes is a little tough to read, right? It's really good stories. I mean, excellent stories, but sometimes they're a little hard for us to read because we're not used to seeing things like that, and we're not getting it acted out in front of us by the priests and the scribes. So now in the next slide, please.
And on this slide, one thing when I reviewed it that stood out to me was the Easter eggs.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I was like, what? And you were like, you never heard of the Easter eggs? And I was like, no, not in this context, no.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's referring to like the special guest characters that just kind of show up in the middle of a story and then disappear. You never hear from them again. They just show up like Baba, right? In the Assortment. He just pops up, he says something funny, and then he disappears. You never hear from him again, right? It's like, who was that guy? That was pretty funny, And you see some things like that. You see random characters every now and then pop up, and then they disappear. They really don't add anything to the actual story, right? They're just there, probably most often, probably just there just to kind of make the home crowd happy, right? Like we're in Chicago, so I'm gonna throw Michael Jordan into my story for to say two lines, and then he's back out, right? And make the hometown happy, that type deal.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really add a lot to it. And the Easter eggs reference, Easter eggs really is just throwing in like little secret hidden things that relate to other stories in some way. And you see that in a lot of these stories. You see either a character or an object or something else that relates back to maybe a completely different story that you may or may not have read yet, right? You see like an amulet or a person like in the Assortment, the ferryman, who relates back to other stories. But you just see things like that just kind of pop up, and then they're kind of hidden in there. And the idea, may be to kind of get you interested in trying to read some other stories about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, while you were speaking on that, the last few moments reminded me of Oh, a pet peeve of mine, but right now I can see where it's just in us. It's part of who we are. People of the music industry, rappers who make reference to other people's songs or famous people or situations or locations, and to me, it's kind of like they were using those references, as you said earlier, to bring the attention to them. You know, they're piggybacking off of them. And I'm like, why? To me, at the time, before now, I was like, why do you need other people's work as a reference to bring to your song, your work? Why don't you just have all your own content? Just everything's about where you're from, where you're at. It to me is like they're pulling, I forget the term they use right now or the reference, but it's like, huh?
Sampling,
Not even sampling. To me,
biting.
fighting something. To me, sampling is like using somebody's music in your background. You know, to me, that's sampling. I don't know. To me, it's just like they're using that person's their um their level, their I know what I'm y'all know what I'm saying.
Their
Their
fame.
their fame. And it's like the people will pay more attention to them because they use this person's name in their rap.
Yeah,
I'm like,
and
or
that's yeah,
they're referring to some stuff that has not. I'm like, did you really need that? Your song was not any good without it. But this part of what you're saying now to me is like, okay, this is just a part of our oral tradition.
yeah. I mean, it's an ancient tradition, right? You just
Yeah.
kind of piggyback on the fame of someone else, right, or the
And
notoriety.
also, it's
Just
also
kind of
always
piggyback.
about the intent.
Yeah,
So some people they just flow with that, but some people they really do use it to try to make a come up on somebody else's work. That's what I was looking for, to come up.
yeah.
Yeah, man. Either way, that's my piece right now. I'm gonna be. I'm. Mm-hmm.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a long tradition, and it's just kind of piggybacking on other people's fame, popularity, notoriety, you know, whatever, on their reputation. You're just kind of piggybacking on someone else, so you just kind of randomly throw them in your song, or you throw some of their lyrics in your song, or whatever, right? Just to kind of piggyback on their fame and their fortune, right? And I don't know. Some people can make it work. Some people can't. I can't. That's why I don't.
I can't neither. That's why I don't, and I don't want to. I'm gonna stick to what I know.
Yeah. So this part, I talk about the Kemetic Tarot uh, Veil of Aset Edition guidebook and the Veil of Aset Tales of the Goddess book. I basically taken all those tales, a lot of those tales, not all those. There's still a lot more out there, but I've taken a lot of these ancient Kemetic tales, and I've edited them. I edited them down, right? So I basically took out a lot of the movie script stuff, a lot of the unnecessary stuff, and kind of cut them down to a readable amount. You know, 2, 3, 4 pages long. You know, in most cases, and really just kind of work to just make them more readable to us, right? More understandable to us. And there's a whole lot that goes into it. Like when I was rewriting them, I had to keep the important details and really emphasize those details, right? So like the plot of the Heru myth or the Asur myth, when you get into that, there's a lot of details, a whole lot of details, but a lot of them are completely unnecessary, just completely useless. But the important ones you really want to stand out, right? You really want those to stand out and jump out at you so that when you look at them, you don't say, oh, well, that's not important. I'm just, forget it. I also wrote them in an easy to read modern format that we're kind of used to. Uh, They're designed to be faster to read and easier to understand than most of the original word for word translations. A lot of the original word for word translations just include so much extra dialogue. A lot of stories have a lot of back and forth, right? A lot of cross discussion, like two people having a conversation for you know 2 hours, and it's I don't need to write down every single word they said for 2 hours. I need to tell you the main points of what they said. And if they said anything interesting, I'll put that in there. But 90% of it's not really that interesting. Doesn't really move the ball. Now, in these books, almost all Kemetic tales are written from a third person point of view, right? So it's really you're observing it. It's everything is he did this, she did that, he did this, she did that. It's everything. You're looking at it from somewhere else, right? I took some of those stories and I rewrote them. Not all of them, but some of them where it kind of made sense from the first person point of view, which means, I did this, I did that. I went and traveled here and I went and traveled there and I ran into this, I ran into that. Mostly just because it made sense to tell some of these stories from that point of view, but also because it makes it more interesting than everything being written like, yeah, he did this, then he did that, then he did this, then he did that. I mean, that to me, that gets really old and redundant. So now some of the stories in these books are in the specifically in the Veil of Aset edition guidebook, the Kemetic Tarot Veil of Aset edition guidebook, are newly created to fill in gaps for Tarot that don't have very many tales written about them. Now, wherever we fill these in, they're based on historical records as much as possible, right? So there's stories in there like the story about Moot, the goddess, right? There's not a lot of stories about her, at least that they found so far. But she is very famous for a couple of things. One is that they would put her once a year in her boat and travel her and row her around the Ishiru, the half moon shaped lake, the crescent moon shaped lake behind her temple, right? They would literally put her in a boat and row her around that lake so that she could survey her land, right? And everything she owned. Yep, there she is. Another thing she was famous for was that also once a year they would carry her. She was Amun-Ra's husband. She was Khonshu's mother. They would carry her statue from her temple down the road to Amun-Ra's temple, and they would allow them to spend the night together one day a year, and then they would take her back to her temple. So she was famous for that as well. But the thing that I focused on that she's famous for is there were a lot of goddesses who were known as the Eye of Ra or the Eye of Amun-Ra. These goddesses were the Wedjet goddesses, a reference to the Eye of Ra or the Eye of Amun-Ra. They basically they would have a festival every year for the goddesses, right? For the Eye of Ra goddesses, the Eye of Amun-Ra goddesses, they would have a festival for them, and it was called the Drunkenness Festival. And this is documented. It's, they found all the records for it in the temples. And specifically, they found the records for this in the temple of Moot. So in the book, I actually took all the historical records and I actually recreated that festival of Moot, or the Drunkenness Festival, as a story as told from the goddess's point of view. So like I said, there's some Neteru that you just don't find a lot of stories for, and so we fall back on the actual records, the historical records, as much as we can to kind of recreate those stories. So any questions on that?
No, somebody made about
Yes, Amun-Ra's wife.
the next book, Kemetic Proverbs.
There's actually a really good book, and it has a lot of Kemetic proverbs in it. But it's, in fact, I have to look it up. I think it's called. I actually don't see it on my bookshelf right here. I have so many books. It take me a while to find them. I believe it's called the Book of Thoth, is what they call it. Thoth being the Greek name for Tahuti. but it's translations of ancient wisdom, scribal wisdom that the scribes would basically pass around or pass back and forth. And there's a lot of the proverbs in there, but they're buried in a lot of not very interesting conversation, right? So they get into this whole thing. The whole book is essentially just like this really long conversation, right? Where the scribes are telling, some scribe is telling a young man or a young scribe how he should live and how he should do this, how he should do that, all the stuff he's supposed to do. But it's and there's a lot of interesting stuff buried in it, but there's a lot of filler that's very, very difficult to deal with. So all right. So with that in mind, I want to basically I want to talk to you real quick about the art of Kemetic storytelling. And for this, we're going to go through the process of writing a modern Kemetic tale. For this one, I've decided that the subject I want to write about is the lion dwarf protector Neteru Bes. All right. I want to write a story about him.
Okay.
All right. Now, Bes is the protector god, the protector Neteru, one of the most popular deities of ancient Kemet, right? He actually, his worship spread all over the world. I mean, literally, he was, they, as far north as Syria, all through the Middle East, literally all over Asia, right? Because it got into modern day Iran, whatever modern day Iran is. Basically, they got into all that, right? It basically spread through Persia, right? It spread into Persia. It was all over North Africa. Even it got as far north as Spain, parts of Spain, right? The worship of Bes, or the recognition of Bes as a protector deity. That said, so he was one of the most popular deities of ancient Kemet. That said, he didn't have any temples and he didn't have any worship centers. He didn't have priests, right? He didn't have temples, right? All you had was his picture, his amulet, his symbols. So, with that said, I'm going to choose a motivation for writing the story. And in this case, I'm going to picture myself. In this case, I'm going to picture myself as a scribe 5,000 years ago, right? I'm going to say that a young person has asked me where the protector Bes came from. So how did he come into being? Because he didn't have any temples. He doesn't have any worshipers, really. I mean, he doesn't have like a cult anywhere. There's really nothing about him that anyone knows, right? He's literally just a protector. Like, okay, almost like a lucky rabbit's foot, right? Kind of just a symbol. All right. So on the next slide. So what do we want? What do we know about Bes and the protector Neteru? So there's a lot of deities that are charged with protecting people. They have the responsibility to protect people. Aset, Nebuchadnezzar, Hathor, Bastet, Heru. In fact, almost all the goddesses, not all of them, but almost all of them have to offer some protection on some level, right? And that kind of goes with the maternity theme, protecting the children, that kind of good stuff. But Heru is also a great protector, right? I mean, a lot of the deities have the responsibility to protect people from certain things. Now, Bes, why did we need another one? Right? That's one of the questions that I want to answer with this story. Why do we need another one? All the Neteru, they're all protecting people. Why do we need another one? So Bes is not what we call a cosmic Neteru like Amun-Ra or Asar. He's what they call a household protector. He doesn't have like universal power. He can't, fly into space and move the sun around. And, he doesn't have, powers like that. He can't, why doesn't he have those cosmic level powers? Why isn't he as powerful as, say, one of the cosmic deities like Tahuti or Amun Ra, or someone on that level? We need to answer that question. Bes has a lot of physical features. When you look at his images, he has a lot of the physical features of other Neteru. In other words, they've combined so many different features from other Neteru in here. He has the plumes coming out of his head. He has the lion face. He's ithophalic, large, genitals. He has a lot of features that other Neteru also have. So why is that? We need to answer that question. And for my last one, I'll say, why does Bes have dwarf legs? Why is he a dwarf? Why is he deformed? What's the problem here? And the question, you go to the next slide. So my answers to these questions are, why do we need another protection deity? Let's say because the cosmic level Neteru have too much cosmic level work to do, right? They're keeping the universe in order. Mayat's keeping the universe in order. She doesn't have time to come down and stop you from getting hit with a rock, right? She doesn't have time for that. She's busy. And also, by the way, the population is growing. So it's getting worse. They have less and less time to help out with little scrapes and scratches, right? They have important things to deal with. They don't have time to stop you from scraping your knee. Why doesn't Bes have cosmic level powers? This could be explained if the cosmic level Neteru created him, right? So he didn't have, a miraculous. He wasn't self-created like Amun Ra. Right? He's not, he wasn't born from other deities like Heru, right? He was just created, right? And when they created him, the Neteru give him a little bit of their power, right? Just a little, here, have a little bit, not too much. Okay, well, that means he's going to have some power, but it's not going to be like cosmic power, right? So why does Bes have physical features of the other Neteru? Why does he have the lion face? Why does he have the plumes coming out of his hat, out of his crown? Well, that's explained by the same thing we did before. When the cosmic level Neteru infuse him with their powers, when they give him a little bit of their powers, it makes his form change, right? So Sekhmet gives him a little power, and suddenly his face turns into a lion face, right? And so on. Why does Bes have dwarf legs? Well, we'll just say because he gets infused with just a small portion of the cosmic Neteru's powers, well, his legs came out a little short. So with that said, now I think we have a story. And I would like to take a moment to read the story that we have to you. Break out my book here real quick. All right. So this story is called The Creation of Bes. Now, one day, the great creator god Amun Ra called upon the council of gods, and he said to them, as the people of Kemet bear children and their children bear children, the populations grow. The people pray to the gods for protection, for guidance, and for prosperity. Responding to the people's prayers consumes all of the gods' attention, and we have less and less time to preserve order across the cosmos. I ask you, my great council, what is the best way to manage our many divine responsibilities under such conditions? Tahuti pondered Amun Ra's question, and he restated the problem, as was his habit. Oh, Amun Ra, grandest creator, it is true that as the population of man grows, the faithful demand more of the gods' time. This does present a problem, since more time spent helping humans results in less time spent maintaining the cosmic balance. I suggest the following solutions to the gods, continued Tahuti. Ask the Neteru Kanum to create a body from the Nile's clay. Have the air god Shu breathe life into the lifeless form and order the Neteru of the Great Council to each infuse his new body with a portion of their power. Thus will a new god be formed, and he shall be charged with answering mankind's petitions for protection. And this new god shall be named Bes, from the word Besa, which means to protect. Amun-Ra agreed, and he ordered it so. Khnum fashioned a body from the fertile Nile clay. Then Shu breathed life into the body. Amun-Ra then ordered each of the Neteru to place a portion of their power within the new deity. Sekhmet placed a portion of her power in the form, and its face turned into a lion's. Min placed a portion of his power in the image, and its phallus grew. Hathor infused him with a portion of her power, and it absorbed her gentle spirit. And so on. As each of the gods and goddesses placed a portion of their power in the newly created body, it took on attributes of the contributor. Finally, Amun-Ra granted a portion of his power to the body, and grand plumes grew out of its crown. The creator god then said to the new Neteru, "You will forever be known as Bes, the protector Neteru. Your charge will be to answer the prayers of the Kemetic people, and to use the powers with which the gods have infused you to grant them divine protection. Whenever your image appears and wherever your name is invoked, evil men and malicious spirits shall flee. Though his full height stretched from the sands to the sky, because each of the deities had granted only a small portion of their powers to Bes, his legs were dwarven in nature, and he was forever known as the dwarf lion god. After Bes was created, the people invoked him as a personal and household protector for their families and homes throughout the land." The end.
Yay. Okay. I was looking forward to this story. That was a great story.
I don't have a career in voiceover work, I know. Thank you for being tolerant.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I enjoyed it. It actually reminded me of a story activity I recently had with a matriarch, and she had it was a fill in the blank. And so I told her some words. She asked for a noun or a verb, etc. And she was filling in the blanks. And when she read the story in the end, it was comical. It was hilarious. So definitely with her, I enjoyed being a part of creating that story, finishing the creation of that story. And here today, you've given us a manner in which to write a story. So when you presented this to share, I was excited, and I'm looking forward to what anyone has to share as a result of you giving us this template today. And as with my last broadcast, we had an art session, and someone in the audience had submitted their art they created during the broadcast, so I shared it as well. If somebody wrote the story along with you while you were going through the steps and all that, then of course, right now I'd share it. Somebody send it to me, I'll share it. Now, also, because you will be here again, we could always share the story on a future broadcast. Somebody want to write and share their story, we can do that. I'll share it. Anything else you'd like to share? I see on this slide you have a website for everyone.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So, on KemeticTarot.net, like I mentioned before, there's more Kemetic tales available. There's probably, I don't know, maybe about 8 or 9 of them up there right now. They're in English and in French.
Okay.
You want to read. But it was about, I don't know, 8, maybe 10 stories up there right now. I will be adding more stories. Some of the stories from the books that I have that come with the set. There's also some stories that are not from the book that you probably haven't seen before that you won't see in the book. So it's just additional content that you're not going to be able to get other places. But yeah, check it out.
Y'all go check that out. Check it out. I've been over there. I need to go to the site again and check out some more. But yes, y'all check that out. So, oh, we do have something else this evening.
Yeah.
I almost forgot.
I don't think anyone's gonna let you forget.
Hey, they will not. They will check me as I was checked earlier. They will check me, and I don't have no problem being checked. All right, Michael, let's do this.
All right, all right. So we uh, talked about three stories that are related. They all have the same theme, right? They all have the same basic plot. The three stories that we talked about, uh, they're based on the Assortment. What are the two stories that are based on the Assortment that are not the Assortment that we talked about?
Oh, I need some Jeopardy music.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay, so we got, it looks like Kathleen Williams got it. She threw Rhodopus in there. I don't know why, but Hamlet and Lion King is correct.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think, Judge?
Captain Williams, tell us why you threw Rhodopus in there. Because you asked for two, right, Michael?
Yep.
Well, the,
You know what? I might have confused the issue when I said we talked about three stories that were related.
yeah, she probably already typed in the three,
Yeah.
and then you said the two at the end.
Yeah.
So I
How you
don't
feel
know.
about the judge?
I remember in the the first broadcast you were on that you had the giveaways. I said you would be the judge. You made me the judge this time.
I'm extremely lenient. That's why.
Wow. Oh, me too. You were delegating this evening.
Sounds like she got it then.
Well, she got it then.
All right.
Kathleen Williams. Yeah, I have Kathleen's address information. Kathleen, if you would, if I need your updated address, let me know. Contact me. You have my contact information. Here's my information for the banner. And I would like for Michael to close out the show. I appreciate your energy today, and I definitely want you to be the last voice heard around here this evening. Peace to everyone from Karmic Dynasty. I enjoy all of you being here. I enjoy the energy, the participation. It is definitely enjoyable around here this evening. I will oh, right quick before we end, I must play my flyer for my I must, y'all. I must. Hold up, y'all. Hold up. Hold up.
That's right. Joy Allen. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. The great goddess from the Karmic Dynasty YouTube channel. Okay, so you know she's going to be driving it. So you got to come see her. And she coming to a city near you. I said, look, listen. I saw the list. I saw Atlanta. I saw Virginia. Okay, I saw Washington. I saw Boston. So she's pulling up. Okay, Silence and Sound event and lecture tour. Where she's going to be dropping gems and illumination. Okay, I'm going to be tuning in. Each city is going to have its own topic. Each city is going to have its own topic. Okay, very interesting. That's a very interesting format. So I'm going to tune in and we got to check her out. I want y'all to be there. Okay, let's stay on the frequency, stay on that vibration. Okay, and support our beloved goddess. Okay, Wadu.
Wow.
All right, my bad. So if you would, um, close out the show for us this evening. I appreciate you.
All right. Well, just one thing, real quick.
Oh,
Someone we were talking about that book that I was talking about.
mm-hmm.
It's actually called "Conversations in the House of Life,"
Oh,
a new translation of the ancient Egyptian book of Thoth, and it's whatever. It's translated by a couple of Germans, so they use the Greek names. But there's a lot of a lot of the I guess Proverbs in here. A lot of the wisdom is in here. But like I said, it's kind of a dry read. There's a lot of extra stuff in here that's just very, very long. It's probably more interesting if it's like read back and forth between two people. Like, yeah, two actors
Mhm.
acting it out might be more
Mhm.
interesting, but it's just a very long, long, story in this book.
Okay.
The only other thing I wanted to do was real quick,
Hmm.
mess this up.
I was looking at your shirt right quick. I didn't. It's
Oh,
some stuff on there. I was trying to catch it all. Wow, that's a great. I like that.
Anpu. Yep, Anpu.
Mm-hmm.
Holding his
Okay.
he's holding his crook and flail.
Right.
Everything's backwards, so I keep.
Yeah, it is. Everything is your right is your left, and your left is your right on camera.
Now, yeah, and it's very interesting. There's God, I'm about to get sidetracked again. So there's a lot of different types of scepters. That the ancient Kemetics also used to use. The crook and flail was one of those. The flail, which is kind of this piece right here with the little, like the cat of nine tails whip or whatever, that was used as a symbol of authority. Like, I can make you do what I want you to do. And then the crook, which is basically like a shortened version of the shepherd's crook, uh, was basically a symbol of the pharaoh's authority, his responsibility to take care of his people, take care of his flock, right? Now on this side, he has the Ankh scepter, essentially, right? But he also has this piece right here, which is these three lines going across, which actually forms the dyad pillar. The dyad pillar is the backbone of a sword, right? And usually you see that in Ptah's scepter. Usually you see this in Ptah's scepter, right? You see the dyad pillar, but that's. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to point this out real quick. So this background that I'm using is actually images from the Book of the Dead of Ani's Book of the Dead. And you see Anpu's right there. He's weighing the heart against the feather. You see
And
Ani.
then your tarot said Ani's on the full card, right?
Yes, Ani
Okay.
is. Yep. And this actually, when you read this, funny thing is when you read this, I hate that this is backwards. So when you read this, it reads essentially it reads like a story with like almost like a comic book with the panels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the first panel. Ani is kind of walking into the Hall of Two Truths, and then in the next panel, his heart's being weighed.
Mm-hmm.
Over here, this guy right here is no, sorry. This guy right here is Shy, right? The god of fortune, the tarot of fortune.
Mm-hmm.
You have two goddesses right here, the two Hathors. You have Ani right here. His heart's being weighed. Over here, you have Anpu. On top, you have the small, get over here, baboon, which is probably a symbol for Tahuti in this case. But then in the next panel, you have Tahuti actually writing down the results, right?
Mm-hmm.
And behind him is Amit, ready to devour the soul, devour the heart if he screws it up. And of course, up here, in like the previous panel, you have the Council of the Neteru, 42 deities, who you have to recite the negative confessions to, the 42 laws of Ma'at. You have to recite the negative confessions to them and basically prove that you're worthy to even get to the next stage. Oh, okay. So I just want to point that out real quick.
Interesting. We don't mind. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us or point out?
Trying to catch me here. No.
Yeah, yeah. As you said, you could do this all day.
I have so much stuff that I like to talk about, but we got to cut it off at some point.
So when you're ready, you can close the show. I've spoken.
Well, the only other thing I had was, does anyone have any questions about anything that we talked about, anything that I said? I mean, if anyone, I'm open to questions.
And there's a 10-second delay, so we need to give them a moment to hear it and then type it, and then for us to receive it.
Yeah,
so
that's fine.
We'll work on that. So yeah, we are actually, while they have a moment to put their questions in that were not already answered, Michael and I, we will be working on scheduling the part 2 of the Kemetic Tarot Veil of Aset. We will have that coming to you when our schedules meet up again to be able to do so. And right now, I just see continued appreciation for your presence today, Michael.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me.
All the time, anytime. All right. Nope, I don't see any questions. Oh, somebody did ask if it's a call-in number. I do have a call-in number. I've not used it in a very long time. Most people send me me a message if they have something to say, or they just go ahead and put in the comment section. Now, if you would like to call in, we could do that. So the question is, anything documented about Ani's life? His afterlife is well documented.
No. They know that he was a scribe, right? That's literally all they know about him. But everything they know about him, they know from his copy of the Book of the Dead or the Book of Going Forth by Day. Everything they know about him comes from that, and that was basically written to be read by him after he died, right? Which it's just is wild to me. It's like a Bible, but it's literally written for you to read after you die. It's useless to you while you're alive. It'll help you out after you die. But they don't know much about him. They know that he was a scribe. Apparently, he was married. He had a wife. But that's literally all they know about him. It's just what they found in the book of in his copy of the Book of the Dead.
And also, where is your beautiful daughter tonight?
Oh, you know what? She has school. Yeah. She's actually going to college and working full time, so she couldn't make it tonight.
Yeah, and anybody want to contact her? Her information's in the ticking below. And let's see what else we have. Oh, some more. Thank you. Maxine Otis is here. And that is a lot of info, actually, that he was a scribe. Hotep. All right. That's all we have so far, Michael.
Okay. Well, just be sure to visit kemetictarot.net. Totally free, no paywalls, none of that stuff. All the information you want's up there. We got all the cards covered. We got stories. We have a section that talks about magic and magical symbols, magical spells, magical amulets, and I'm going to be adding content to it as we go. So,
gratitude for the added content to your website, and everybody visit the website. Seriously, that's my piece. I keep saying it, but that's my piece for now.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
That's your closing.
I'm a simple man.
Ain't nothing wrong with it.
I like burgers and fries. I'm a simple guy. Can I say?
And on that note,
Thank you all for coming. Hotep. Blessings and peace.
I said that we was done. What? Hold on. I'm working on ending the live. I don't know. It's not that I can't end it. It's just these screens are not leaving out
Hey,
like
we're
I
back,
want.
everybody.
We're back. Part two.
Part two.
Oh man, live broadcast, live broadcast. I do not do recordings. People ask me about recordings. I don't. I'd have to learn that. And I know somebody that edits tape, so I don't edits, and I'm just like, anyway, this is what happens when we live. I forget things sometimes, like how to remove the screens.
Okay, well, I can stop the camera. I stop my camera, so.
He can stop it. I can stop my camera. You stop the camera. I'm gonna move him out because he can stop his camera. But I only brought him in because I said I wanted his voice to be the last voice we hear. OMG. Peace, y'all. Peace. Peace, 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 peace. Where we at? Peace. Okay, there we go. I had the wrong background up. This is how I wanted to end the broadcast with this background. Peace, y'all. Peace, peace, peace.